All right. Welcome to the show. Thanks for being here,
Hi,
Betsy.
Tom. It's great to be here.
Absolutely. It's great to have you. So, just gonna a quick introduction. Betsy Talbot is a best-selling self-published author. She works with her husband, Warren, and the self-publishing business together, and she lives in sunny Spain. Sounds pretty cool. So, how did you actually come to live in Spain as an American?
Wow. Well, it was a very roundabout route, but I will give you the short story. When we were 37, we had just experienced two people really close to us who had life-threatening illnesses, both of them age 35. We looked at each other and said, "Holy cow, life is short. What if we knew we weren't going to make it to our 40th birthdays? What would we change about our lives right now?" And that thing was travel, and we started thinking, how can we make this happen long before retirement? So we did what sane, normal, everyday people would do, and we decided to sell everything we owned and quit our jobs and travel around the world. And so it took us about 2 years to make that happen, and we left on October 1st, 2010 to travel the world, and along the way, that's actually when we became authors. People were following us through our marriedwithluggage.com website, and they wanted to know, how do you make a big life change at 40? How do you, even if they didn't want to travel, how do you gather the resources, the financial, the logistical, the relationship resources to make something like that happen? And that's how we started writing books. And really, we kept traveling for about 4 years. And after a while, I got tired of trying to write books at little coffee shops or little makeup stands in the hotel room or whatever. And we decided that we wanted to have a home base. And we were in Spain. After a long hike in Turkey, we found the perfect little village. We fell in love, and we thought, I can imagine living part-time here. I can definitely imagine writing here. And so we bought a house, and we live in this tiny village in what I consider paradise.
That's awesome. So, you basically spent 2 years just like nomadic. You didn't have a home, didn't have a home
We
base.
spent
You're just
four
traveling around.
years, 4 years nomadic. So 2 years downsizing everything, 4 years traveling, and now I would say we're here probably 8 months out of the year and traveling the rest of the time. So we're still somewhat nomadic, but we do have more of a home base now.
That's awesome. So the traveling experience, that whole, I mean, that's a like, a really transformative experience to just say, hey, this life is great, but we're going to go do something totally different and just sell everything and move on. And so it sounds like that was really the impetus for you to start writing books. Is that right?
Well, it was because I've always wanted to be a writer, and I think a lot of people feel that way, but I thought, who am I to write? I don't have an MFA. I don't have all of this experience. I haven't been a successful freelancer. I don't have the qualifications, and that's why I think it's been so great to have the indie publishing, come into its own, because anyone can try their hand at this. If you really want to be serious about it and do it, this is prime time for people like me, people like your listeners out there who are thinking, I really want this to be my life. This is the perfect time. And I'll tell you, coming in my 40s and having this transformative experience at the same time made me think that I could do anything. And so maybe that was foolish, maybe it wasn't, I don't know. But it was a good time for me in my life to start thinking, you know what? All those things I've denied myself and said I wasn't ready for, or I was waiting for someone to give me permission, I just don't need that anymore. And I can go ahead and try it myself. And if I fail, that's okay. If I don't fail, maybe it will open up another opportunity. And that's kind of how I've been living my life for the last 4, 5, 6 years, and I highly recommend it.
That's awesome. That's so cool. I can just tell is looking at you, your face, your voice, you're totally inspired by what you're doing, which I
I
love.
am.
Love to be around
I
people who are
love
like
my life. I love my relationship. I love what we've built together. Now, granted, it comes with sacrifices. Certainly you can't make a change like this and still have all the comforts that you had before and all of the same kind of lifestyle you had before. I mean, we did have to leave our family and friends to go off on this journey, so you learn how to make new friends and you learn how to maintain old friendships. And there are all kinds of adjustments that come with this life, but the benefits, the results for me far outweigh anything that we've had to do to make this lifestyle happen. And because of what we've done, achieving these big goals together, it has transformed our relationship as well, which I realize this isn't a relationship podcast, but when you work with your spouse, having a really strong relationship where you can say the things you need to say to each other, when you can go after big goals together, when you can learn a whole new business together, those ways of interacting and that kind of teamwork is really important. And I don't know. I don't know if Warren and I could have done this 7 or 8 years ago. I think we probably would have had that first big fight, and we would have said, forget it, this isn't for us, we can't work together.
That's awesome. So I want to go back for a moment to that kind of original decision point. You talked about, your friends got sick, and it really woke you up to, what you were doing with your life and what was possible for your life. So can you tell us more about that and why you decided to make that change?
Well, we had always loved travel, and in the little bit of vacation time that we had, we did travel, but we were both pretty tied to our jobs. We're both pretty aggressive type A kind of people, and we loved working. We had a good life, lots of friends, a house, a dog, and a cat, and all the normal things that you have. But my brother had his heart attack when he was 35 years old, and then our friend who had the brain aneurysm, she was self-employed, doing very well, living a life very similar to ours. Our husbands even worked at the same company, and to see how fast your life can change, I think that's really what just kind of woke us up. We weren't unhappy, and that's the thing that I tell people all the time is that it was a next evolution. It was one of those, we've always wanted to do that, and we planned in our retirement that we would. But you start looking at something like that, and thankfully both of these people recovered, but they may not have. They were both very serious illnesses, and so what are you going to do with your life? What do you really want to make of your life? What do you want to experience? How do you want to live? And what can you do right now to bring yourself closer to that? So there were lots of changes that we made before we even left to better align with that goal. So I certainly don't think you have to sell everything and travel around the world, but there's a lot that you can do. If you say, I want to have every morning, I want to have breakfast with my husband, I want us to be able to talk every morning. Most people would say, I'm too busy for that. We've got too much going on. But you know what? If you really want it to happen, you can make it happen. So there are all kinds of little things in your life that you can set up that way. And I think that's how we started transforming our lives in those little ways as we saved the money and got rid of everything as we were planning on making this happen. But then, the same thing happens in our book business, in our publishing business. You decide, okay, what do I want that to look like? Okay, I'm not there yet, but what can I start doing today? What can I do tomorrow? And it's a very methodical approach to getting closer to your dream, I think. And it doesn't matter what your dream is, really.
Absolutely. That's such a great point. And I think I love what you said about, even before you made that big change, you started making all these little changes. And I think that's how it works. And you kind of alluded to this point where it's like we are like our own worst enemy. Like we talk ourselves all the time out of what we really want. Like we say, oh, I really want, breakfast with my spouse every morning and a great conversation every morning. Oh, but I'm too busy, but the schedule's not going to work. And it's like, why not? Like, you get to make your own decision. You get to set your own schedule. You can wake up earlier. You can go to bed earlier. It's your life. You can structure it the way you want it to be. And I think a lot of times what we do is we, and not just writers, like everyone, we just talk ourselves out of what we really want with our life. And so it's so inspiring to see someone like you who said, you know what, we're really going to make this life the life that we love, the life that we want to live. And so it's so inspiring to see you doing that.
Well, thanks. And this is why I think indie publishing is so cool for people who want to live that way, because it really is sort of, I don't want to say the Wild West, but it is very much an evolving, developing thing that you can kind of make your own way in it. And I like things like that, whether you're talking about traveling, whether you're talking about living in a different country, going a minimalist route if that's your thing, or remaking your health by following a health plan, all those kinds of things that you can do to kind of revamp your life and kind of make it the way you want it to be instead of the way it was or the way you think it has to be. Really, all of that is on the table. There's so much you can change about your life that doesn't require, selling everything to travel around the world. Because, again, we had 2 years of planning before we made that happen. And one of the things I tell people all the time when they say, oh, I would love to travel like you, I would love to do what you're doing. And one of the first questions I asked them was, when was the last time you went to an ethnic restaurant in your own city? And when people kind of step back and say, well, I don't know. And you start thinking that if you're not adventurous at home, what makes you think you'll be adventurous when you leave home? You have to practice the kind of things that you want to be where you are. You can't wait until some future date to be what you want to be. You are who you are right now. So if you want to live an adventurous life, you can be adventurous at home. And when you're adventurous at home, it allows you to develop opportunities to be adventurous in other places, whether it's your work or whether it's travel or relationships or whatever it is you want to do. But I do believe it's a mindset. It's not a location, and it's not has nothing to do with how much money you have or your opportunities or your age or any of those things. It's totally a mindset.
Wow, that's such a great question. That's such a fantastic question, and yeah, I think that's totally true. Like you are what you practice. If at home, you don't go out and you're not adventurous, then just because you go to Europe or Asia or Africa or somewhere else doesn't mean all of a sudden you're going to become this amazing adventurous person. I mean, it might. I mean, sometimes people, just change your environment can really change your lifestyle. But yeah, it's just a great point to actually practice it. And I think that's, really blends into the writing process as well. Because like, if you're not practicing new things in your writing, then you're just gonna, you're not growing, you're not evolving, you're not changing, and you're not going to become a better writer.
I agree with that. And it's not even just in your writing, it's in your writing and it's also in your writing business. If you're not tracking metrics and trying new things and keeping abreast of current technologies and, because there are a lot of people that still believe that the only way to legitimately be a writer is to have one of the big six publishers tap you on the shoulder and say, we would like to give you an advance and publish your book and blah, 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 blah. There are so many other ways, whether you're doing short serialized fiction, whether you're self-publishing, whether you band together and create your own little group. I mean, there are so many ways out there to make it happen, and I think it's important for all of us, whether we decide to go those routes or not, to at least be aware of what's going on in the industry, because what may not be right for you right now could be right for you in the future, and it's just important to stay abreast of that and see what's going on, what the possibilities are.
Absolutely. So what do you, as a self-publishing author, like where do you get your industry news? What do you pay attention to? What do you read?
Well, I'm a member of Ally. It's a group of indie publishers, and there's an annual membership fee. And what that gives you is access to their blog, which has all kinds of great information, but also access to the Facebook group. And the Facebook group has really great other authors like Joanna Penn and people that are really kind of pushing ahead in the industry, and you can make direct connection with those people and learn from those people in casual conversations. It's almost like a very informal mastermind in a way if you pay attention, if you're there to learn. So I'm a member of that. Because I've just transitioned from doing nonfiction to fiction this year in the romance realm, I've just started getting into some romance author groups, and those are really good as well, because what I have found is that romance authors are some of the most supportive and collaborative groups out there. So if you're interested in finding out what's working for someone, they are much more likely, I have found, than in other genres to share what's working, what they're doing, because I think it's because romance readers are such a voracious group that everyone knows that no one can possibly satisfy all of them. So they're happy to share the wealth of all of these readers. I don't know if that's why or if they just happen to be very nice people. But there is a forum called Romance Divas, which has some really great advice as well. And then I am a member of a super secret women's writing group that I am not allowed to name, and it is also very beneficial as well.
Awesome. So how did you find that secret group? I mean, you don't have to tell us about what it is or whatever.
No, it was just you have to know someone who's part of it, and they bring you in, and I think that's true for a lot of groups. Whether they're large groups or small groups, it's sort of a mastermind situation where you find people who are kind of at your level or a little bit above, people that you can both teach and learn from, and finding a group with a similar goal. So whether you're 4 people or 10 people or more, you get together in this group and you're able to talk about things that you don't want to talk about publicly. So financial figures, launches that went really well or launches that flopped, and how do you make that better? The kinds of things that you don't necessarily want to put out on a public forum. And these are the best ways to learn when you can harness those kinds of relationships, not only to take, you also have to obviously be able to contribute something as well, which is why it's important to be in a group where there's someone there that you can learn from in something that you're not so great at, and you have something to offer those people that you're good at that maybe they're not. So it's a little bit of work to find those kinds of groups, but it is so worth it when you do, because you get the kind of information that you would have to publish 10 books yourself to figure out. And who wants to go through all the pain of doing that if you can find an easier, better way through the advice of some kind person who's gone before you?
Absolutely. That's such a great point, and one that I don't think can be repeated enough. That if you want to be successful in life as a writer, as a publisher, really any area of life, just find other people who have been there before you and ask questions. And I think I look at my own business and as an author, and my own career. It's like there are so many points where I just had one question, like how do I publish a book on Kindle? How do I get an audiobook published? How do I do this? And it was like that one question was stopping me from moving to the next step. And all I had to do was find an answer to that one question, and I'd be able to move ahead and grow my business. And I think the thing that happens is like over my career, there's been thousands of questions like that. And some I found on the internet, some I found on Google, some I found from friends. But I mean, the big questions that really made the biggest difference in my business came, like you said, from those like private groups, mastermind groups, Facebook groups of other authors who had already been there before me, who were able to just answer my question. And I think that's such a powerful, powerful tool.
Well, and one thing to know, kind of a pro tip when you get into a situation like that, is to do your own homework first. So if you're trying to find out something specific about publishing to Kindle, let's say, you do 80% of the research yourself. You find out the bulk of the basics. When you go to that expert, you want to get the highest and best use of their time. You don't want them to waste time telling you what you can find out on your own Google search. You want to know that special little something that they'll only get to 10 minutes into the story. And believe me, if they're really that successful, they're not going to give you that much time anyway. So I think the pro tip is do as much homework as you can and make your ask super specific to let that person know, I've done my homework, I know where I'm at, I respect what you've done, I see what you've done, and I want to know how you did this one thing right here. Because they're going to give you that pro tip, and it's just going to be a flash of insight without all the garbage around it that you can get on your own time from Google. So my pro tip is definitely ask them that super specific one little thing, not that big general question, because they're just going to, well, frankly, they're not going to take you seriously, because they're going to think, you're coming to me for this and you haven't done your basic homework yet? That's, not the smartest thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Like if someone asks like how to publish a book on Kindle, it's like you can just Google it. Like there's like it's it's not hard to figure out. But if they ask me a specific question like how do I insert the right keywords in my book on Kindle, then I know okay they've actually done some research. They actually know some basic stuff, and I can really answer that specific question. But if someone asks like a generic question like how do you publish an ebook, it's like I've written entire books on that subject. It's not like I can just answer in 2 sentences and give you the secrets to it. It's just like if you haven't done the homework, it's very hard to help point you in the right direction because there's so much basic groundwork you have to learn first.
Yeah, we wrote a book called Dream Save Do, which was a financial, logistical, and emotional kind of plan of how we made this big change in our lives at 40. And we get people who ask us all the time, how did you make this big change in your life? And I look at them like, I wrote a book. I mean, like, if you want to know a specific thing, or if you want to know, what's the hardest part about it, or I'd be happy to share those kind of things with you. But when you ask a general question like, "How did you do it?" Well, gosh, that answer's so long. I had to write a book. I can't tell you that in 2 minutes.
Yeah, exactly. So okay, so what was that first book that you wrote, and what was really the impetus for that?
So the first book was Dream Save Do, and really it came about by accident. I mean, I think because our life was so open to possibility at that moment, we had been traveling for 6 or 8 months. We had spent 2 years before that, downsizing, and the best thing that we did was that we started a blog the first day that we made this decision to travel. So for over 2 years, we wrote about every struggle, every success, every discovery, because at the time we were doing this, I know there's a ton of blogs out there now that have all kinds of information about how to do this, but back in 2008, there wasn't a ton out there. There was like Tim Ferriss and his 4-hour work week, but there wasn't like the couple's guide to changing your life at 40 if all your friends think you're crazy because you want to sell everything and travel the world. We couldn't find that site. So we created our own and we called it Married with Luggage. And so we started writing just about the fears, the successes, how we were doing things. So it was part practical information and part holy crap, this is what we're thinking in our heads. Today we're really excited about this. The next day we're really scared out of our minds, and this is what's going on. And so we had a lot of information, and people were asking us to put it in a form that they can use. Like, hey, it's great to read your stuff, but how can I do this? Show me how. So we did. We put it together, and we did it in these three basic categories. The dreaming, the saving, the doing. So how do you define your dream, and then how to make it happen? And that was our first book, and we put it together just over a year after we left. I remember we had just arrived in Thailand the night before, jet-lagged like crazy from Germany, and that was the day that we uploaded the book, and we had 900 technical problems, and I will never forget I will never forget it. It was a learning experience for sure. But yes, that was our first book, and we relied a lot on the questions that people asked us to determine. And if you are lucky enough to have an audience asking you questions, well, there's your book right there. People already want to know something from you. They already respect you for your experience, your knowledge, your education, and they're asking you questions. So why not put together something that they can use?
Hmm. Absolutely, that's a great point. So what made you decide to switch to fiction?
So we wrote the 4 books, and I feel like we sort of essentially went through the logistics of how we got to the life that we have. And now that we've been living it for a few years, I kind of feel like I'm ready for something different. I feel like I have given a certain amount of knowledge of this transition, and I'm done thinking about that transition now because I've already done it and I'm living a different life. And we move on and we want to do different things. And so I have these 4+ years now of travel and experience and insight and crazy people I've met around the world and all of this, and I thought, how can I possibly share this? I mean, some of the stuff is just so incredible, as like I could never put someone's name to it. And then I started thinking about turning 40 and making these big changes in my life and the exotic nature of travel, and I thought the best thing is fiction. I'm going to write for women just like me, women who want a good love, adventure, personal growth, friendship kind of a story that talks about all the possibilities of life at 40, all the things that can happen in the next phase of your life. And so that's why I decided to start writing fiction, and that idea came on a hike in Scotland. Didn't do anything about it for a long time. And then last January, we were renting a house in Morocco with 2 friends. We had decided we were going to have a sort of a month-long mastermind kind of a thing, work all day, collaborate in the evenings, make a tasty tagine. I don't know. And so we did this in this gorgeous house in Morocco for a month. And during that time, we started talking about fiction and what are the best markets in fiction and where are people buying books. The young adult is very popular now, and I thought, that's not something that I'm really interested in writing. But then when romance came up, it's not something that I had necessarily considered before, but just like everything with self-publishing now, there are so many categories within romance. I mean, you can write paranormal romance, you can write young adult sort of romance, or I think they call it college age romance. You can write all kinds of types of romance, and I thought, why not for women over 40? Why not carve out my own little niche and write for women like me, women that I know, women who are interested to see what this next half of life brings? And so that's what I did. I developed a five-book series and just published the first one in March. The second one comes out in August, and I'm really excited about these 5 women friends who are each in their own way exploring what the second half of their life looks like.
That's awesome. So it sounds like you were really open to it. So you just had this idea on a hike in Scotland, you wanted to write fiction, but you weren't really, you didn't know yet if you wanted to write a sci-fi thriller, or you weren't exactly sure what it had to look like until you did some more research, had a mastermind, thought about it, and then really decided, okay, this is the right market for you.
I'm kind of a muller. I like to think about things for a little while, but I will tell you one thing that I did, and I'm sure lots of writers do this. I keep an Evernote file of ideas, just whatever, and most of them never come to anything. But I keep an Evernote file of ideas, and after we got back from the hike in Scotland, I transferred my notes from my little notebook that I was carrying, and I wrote down some ideas that I had for a story. And I thought, okay, if I ever decide to do this, here's a good idea. And I will tell you that I didn't use that exact idea, but the seed of it is what became the first book in the series, which is Wild Rose. And I'm surprised at how long that came and like how much of that seed stuck with me from that moment. And that's another thing that I'll say from a writing perspective is that I have not always been an exerciser. As a matter of fact, I have been an exercise avoider. But one thing I can say about my creativity is that if I get outdoors and I sweat a little bit, just in a walk, a hike, I'm not a runner, I'm not bicycling or anything, usually just a good walk up a hill. There is something about that that is magic for my creativity. And I might kick and scream all the way out the door to get there, but once I'm out there in it, I don't know, it's magic. And every time we go away on a long hike, I come back with an idea. It never, ever fails me.
That's awesome. So, I mean, it sounds like, if you've traveled, if you sold all your stuff and moved and you don't have a home office, it's hard to keep track of your things and notebooks and ideas. So is Evernote the only tool that you use to keep track of all your ideas and book ideas and research and so forth?
Well, I carry a notebook with me all the time. Right now, because we are now in Spain and I'm kind of more, I'm here, I have a bigger notebook. But normally my notebook is only about it's a tiny little notebook that I carry with me when I'm not at home. And I write everything down. And then whenever I get to my computer, anything that's not just a fleeting note that doesn't matter, I transfer it into Evernote or I use Todoist to manage tasks. So if it's just something like I have an idea to pitch an article or something like that, I'll go ahead and write it down. But it's important for me to keep everything in my computer and to keep everything in a cloud system in my computer because I did get my backpack stolen on a train on the way to Budapest. It was a brand new MacBook too. And when your whole life gets stolen, because when you don't really own anything and you have a backpack that's got your passport, your credit cards, and your laptop in it, it all goes away. But you know what? That can happen to anyone. Someone can break into your car. You can have a power outage at your house that fries your computer. So having a backup, Google Drive, whatever you want to use, Dropbox, I think is really important for that kind of stuff. But yes, I do use Evernote to track all that. But to actually write, I use Scrivener. So I would say I use Evernote as like my before writing process, but the minute I start on a project, all the research, all the notes, character sketches, location sketches, all of that goes into Scrivener.
Gotcha. That's awesome. Yeah, that's such a great tip about having a cloud backup and using Dropbox or Google Drive because, I can't tell you how many people. I mean, it happened to me. I lost, so many of all my poems and everything that I'd written as a child growing up when I switched computers, and I just didn't. I mean, back then there wasn't even. Dropbox didn't exist. There was no cloud computing. Didn't exist.
Right.
But today it's so easy to back stuff up. You don't need flash drives everywhere. It's good to have a physical backup as well. But if you're halfway through a manuscript and you lose it all, I mean that's so much work to redo, and it can be incredibly disheartening.
We were in Mexico 2 years ago, and I was doing final edits on a book before we published, and I did like 3 days of work offline because there was really terrible internet at our hotel, and I thought, oh, it's no big deal, I'll just back it up later. But it was probably 8 or 10 hours worth of work, and we got to our new rental, plugged it in, power surge came through, fried my hard drive. And because that stuff was gone, I mean, the bulk of the book was still there, but I lost that 10 hours of work. And, my husband had to perform intricate surgery on the hard drive. I mean, really, he spent more time doing that than it probably would have taken me to redo all the work. But, I mean, it's frustrating when stuff like that happens. And, you could kick yourself because you think, I know to do these things. But anyway, so, yeah always back up.
Awesome. Well, you're such a fascinating interview guest that I think we've gotten a little bit off topic because I actually did want to talk about beta readers. And
okay.
I know you've had an amazing amount of success with beta readers. So tell us about that. For people who don't even know what a beta reader is, can you explain what a beta reader is and what process you go through to find them?
Okay, I use beta readers in 2 formats, and so what a beta reader is someone who's going to look at your work, whether it's completed or not, and they're going to give you feedback. And typically you would direct them as to what level of feedback you want them to give. So is this someone who's basically essentially proofreading it? Is this someone who's looking at it saying, your story is viable, your story has holes? You have to tell your beta reader what you're looking for. And I know a lot of people use their best friend, their mother, their spouse to be the beta reader. absolutely normally the worst people because they're not objective. They can't be because they are your spouse, your mother, your best friend. So what I try to do is find people who are people that I somewhat know, but not really. So what's great about having an email list and a Facebook following is that you're able to announce these things. I am interested in having a beta reader to help me find out if this story is worth a darn. So you can have all kinds of people respond to that, and you have to tell them specifically. So in this instance, it was my first romance and my first fiction book, and I was terrified that I knew nothing and I was doing it terrible. You know, I had no idea if the story that I wrote was viable. So I said, I am showing you my first draft, which, as you know, is like standing out on the street in your underwear. I mean, it is really, you're exposing your first draft to people. And I said, I need people to tell me what's missing. Don't read this as if it is an enjoyable book. What I'm asking you to do is not necessarily enjoyable. I want you to join me on the creative process and help me with this. And I was surprised to have so many people, respond. And I can't remember how many people. I had 69 total beta readers. The majority of those were in the first round, so I think something like 40 of the beta readers were in that first draft, and they gave me detailed feedback. What I did with that is I created a spreadsheet, and I put each character's name in a column, and then I also put a second page that was just more general feedback, so plot, overuse of certain words, unbelievable things, holes, just random details, things that I did wrong. And so I categorized the feedback. And so if I kept getting the same thing over and over again, I thought, oh, okay, that's it. Because you're not trying to please everyone because, FYI, you can't. What you're trying to do is you're trying to find the points that people keep hitting on, because that means you have a problem there. It doesn't necessarily mean that person is going to tell you how to fix it, because they probably can't, but as long as you know where the problem is, you as the creative can find a way to get your message out in a way that addresses that problem for the reader. So that's what I did with the first draft. Then I took all that information, made all the changes that I wanted to, and then, again, I was saying before about how collaborative and supportive the romance genre is. A best-selling romance author that I happen to know sent out a call on her Facebook page and said, my friend Betsy has this book. She really needs to find out from some serious hardcore romance readers. Do you like it? Do you not like it? What does she need to know before she does the final copy? And so that's when I got that last round of beta readers that I didn't know at all. They knew nothing about me. So these people weren't fascinated by me traveling. They hadn't read my nonfiction books. They knew nothing about me, which is ideal because they are hardcore romance readers. So they were going to give me the straight dope, and they did. And so that's the other thing with this whole beta reader process is you have to separate yourself and your self-esteem and all of those things from your work product. That's all it is your work product. These people are telling you how to make it better. You don't have to go crawl in a corner and cry your eyes out, any of those things. So I took that information to, again, make it better. And so by the time I sent it to the editor to go through the whole thing, this book had been vetted by 69 people. I had written it and I had revised it and revised it again, and then it went through professional editing. So it really got a lot of attention. Now, I would not give every book that level of attention. I was just sort of paranoid because it was my first. But I will always use a beta reader process because it's so valuable. You can't get so precious about your work that you can't take outside input. And again, it's not to change what you're doing. It's not to say I'm going to make everyone else happy. It's to find out where your problem points are so that you can make it a better experience and you can fully express yourself in the best way possible for your readers.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah. So when you talked about, you want to ask specific questions, specific kind of feedback you want from your readers.
Mm-hmm.
So when you had like the big group of 40 readers at the same time, was there a different question to different groups of those readers, or was it the same question to all of them?
I did the same question. So basically I said, first of all, I said, don't worry about typos and grammar. That's out the door. That's way further down. So don't even think about that. I said, I'm trying to think. So I said, what is it? Do you like the characters? Do you find the story compelling? What keeps you reading, and what stops you from reading? So I wanted to know what made them want to put the book down. So when you're reading the book, at what point did you say, I think I'm going to go make dinner? Or what point said, I'm going to stay up late and I'm going to finish reading these points? Because I want to know, where is it flowing and where is it not flowing? Because that's really all you can expect most beta readers to tell you. Because if you ask them for too much analysis, you're going to get 69 different responses, and that's not going to help you. So you just need to know, where is it flowing, where is it not flowing.
Yeah, that's such a great point. And yeah, I love that you told them don't worry about typos, don't worry about grammar, because otherwise, if you just give them your manuscript and it's your first draft, there's going to be typos, there's going to be grammatical errors, there's going to be mistakes, and they're going to spend 90% of their time finding every typo for you and not giving you the information that you really need at that point in time, like you said, about, is the story flowing or not, and do you like the characters or not. That's such a great point, to really ask and really be specific about exactly what you need from the readers, because it's like anything in business. Like if you tell an editor, hey, here's my manuscript, just do whatever you want to do with it, they're not necessarily going to give you the result that you need at that time.
Well, it's just like we were talking earlier about asking people in these mastermind groups, or if you happen to get in the elevator with Stephen King or whoever, if you have a moment of their time, you want to ask them something very specific. You want to know, like, the best thing that's going to help you. You don't want to fog it up with a bunch of extraneous stuff. You want to be laser focused, and not only that, you want to be very respectful of their time. They're volunteering to read your manuscript and give you feedback, which is, most people, it's very hard for them to give feedback. And to find good beta readers who will give you feedback and tell you when things aren't working, I mean, that's gold. That's gold, because so many people will just say, I really enjoyed this story. You're a good writer. It was fun. Thanks for letting me read it. And you will get some of those back. You can't help it, because people are not always good at giving feedback. And that's true in everything. It's not just in writing. I mean, we don't always tell our spouses that we think they're gaining weight or anything like that either. I mean, it works in everything in life,
Yeah, you want people who can be like brutally honest, and just be totally objective and just give you, like, here's how it is. This character sucks. This scene was awful. I hated this scene. That's the kind of feedback I want as a writer, because then I can say, okay, I can go and fix that. But if someone just says, oh, it's a great book, well, I mean, I appreciate that feedback. I very much appreciate that, but it doesn't help me become a better writer, because I haven't found a problem or an issue that I can go address and work on and improve.
Well, that's true. And in the beginning, first of all, you want this feedback before the public reviews. You don't want this to be on your Amazon reviews. You want to get this beforehand when you can fix it. One of the first bits of feedback that I got on the first draft was that my main character wasn't likable. And I was doing a lot of work in the beginning of the book showing why she had certain constraints in her life, and why she felt such a hesitancy to move forward and to make some changes. And I did a really good job of painting all the problems, but I didn't paint all the softness. I didn't round her out, and I didn't realize that until a reader pointed that out to me. And so then when people read this next group read the second book, they said, wow, she's just so rich and lovable. And I thought, wow, what a difference. But if those people hadn't told me that, the beta readers in the first round, I would have just thought, wow, I've really explained all of Rose's problems, and now everybody knows them. But I had forgotten that humanizing factor, to make her also warm and nice and all of that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's awesome. It's amazing what you just don't know until you really, like you said, you get feedback from readers. But whether it's public on Amazon or beta readers, it's like the people who actually read your genre, who read books like yours, who know books like yours, who know that market, who know what they like, they're going to give you the best feedback. If you give your romance novel to a group of people who only read like hardcore sci-fi, you're not, even if they're amazing, voracious readers and they're incredibly brilliant and they've got IQs 160, doesn't mean they're going to give you the kind of feedback that's going to make your romance book better to the people who love romance, who are going to buy your book and read it.
Well, when my husband reads my romance, because before we worked together on the nonfiction books, and we still do work together on these, but in slightly different roles. But when he reads it, his comment to me always is, "I would never say that. And I always have to tell him, honey, women read these kind of books because you're not saying this kind of stuff. So he always wants me to make it more realistic. And I said, if it's more realistic, it's not entertaining. It's just like, murder mysteries and zombies and adventure books and all that. We want what we don't have in our everyday lives.
Yeah, you got to make the story maybe a little bit larger than life, so it's fun.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's awesome. So okay, so you have this really great work relationship with your husband, and you travel all over the world together, and done things that would probably stress most relationships to the brink. So how do you actually, stay productive working on your business together without, getting in fights all the time or arguments or breaking down?
Well, I would say that we do still fight. That doesn't go away. But we have learned to divide and conquer. So we work together in our business. We have nonfiction books. We have a course. We have a podcast, and then we have this new fiction series. And so we have distinct roles, and that helps. We've also learned not to take things personally when we fight. So when we have a discussion, we limit it to one topic. We're not allowed to bring other things in, and that is whether we're discussing a personal issue or whether we're discussing a business issue, and we make each other stay on track. That is something that's really helped us. We do still fight, but our fights are pretty fast now. I think you learn to fight fast when you're in situations around the world where you have no one else to depend on, and you rely on each other for everything, and maybe there's no one else who even speaks your language, so you can't really hold a grudge for very long. So I think what happens when you work together is that you have to respect the other person's talents and skills and what they bring to the table, and you have to let that go and let them manage it. You can't micromanage, you can't nag, you can't overlook. You just have to say, I trust that they are doing X, and I will do X over here, and how it all integrates is how our business is successful. So we do get together every day. We walk for an hour, and during that time is when we have kind of our debrief, and we talk about work and personal and everything, and just kind of come together and make sure that we're on the same page with everything. That's when we also air some of our discussions that we might be having over difficult topics. But it really does come down to separate roles, managing your own piece of the business, and knowing how it integrates. Because I know I have to do things on a certain time level for him to be able to do certain things on a time level, and that's true whether we're talking about the podcast or the books or the course or anything. So yeah, I think it's knowing your roles, respecting the other person's role, making your fights very productive, knowing when you go in that it's not about your interest. It's not I'm right, you're wrong, you're right, I'm wrong. It's this is our problem in the middle, and the most important thing about this fight is that we solve this problem, whether it's business or personal. This is the most important thing. So we fight based on interest, not based on our own individual positions most of the time. We are still human. Sometimes we get petty and mean.
Yeah, that's such a great point. I think, it's so powerful when you come together, and even if you're angry, upset, or whatever, but if both of you are looking at it as, hey, we have this problem outside of us that we're going to solve, it's like you're working together on the problem, and it turns what could be, fighting each other into, okay, let's be productive here. Let's figure out what is the problem, what do you need, what do I need, how does this have to be resolved, and you go and fix it. And even if there's tempers and everything like that involved, it comes out and you both feel so much better because you actually solved the problem instead of just fighting over and over and not being productive. And I think that's so important for a creative person, especially because like if you're like constantly bogged down in relationship issues, it's gonna impact every area of your life, including your creativity. It's very hard to be a productive writer, author, business person if you're spending so much time in a stressful relationship that because it impacts every area of your life.
Well, we're both really kind of hard-headed type A people, and for a lot of the times we were sort of butting heads all the time. Each of us was battling to be the boss, to be in charge. And it wasn't until we figured out how to work together as a team, which frankly took a little while. I mean, this didn't happen overnight. And I think having to depend on each other because of the travel made the whole business transition a little bit later easier. But yeah, definitely you have to come into it with a team mindset. And, I always say that, we've been married all this time. But it wasn't until we became a team that I actually felt like we were so intertwined. I mean, it's more than it ever was before because we rely on each other for everything. For, we live in a foreign country. We run our business together. If we're not on track, it impacts every single area of our lives. We can't escape each other.
And I think that kind of a lot of the same principles you're talking about, with your marriage, also true of business relationships, with your
Yes.
editor or cover designer or whatever. Like if you're having conflicts with them, you can't communicate clearly and directly and give each other honest, that brutal, honest feedback, then it's going to impact that relationship, and it's going to be very hard to get the work done to the level that you need it done if you can't have that honest, open communication.
Well, for a long time, I was really scared to speak clearly. I thought that because I grew up in the South and I grew up in a very conservative religious environment and, kind of I was always taught to be a good girl and to be nice and to be polite. And so it's hard for me to tell someone when they've disappointed me or I don't think they're doing a good job or I want to change direction. It wasn't always easy for me to, it is easy for me to do now, but it wasn't for a long time easy for me to do, especially to the person that I loved. Um, Now that I know how to speak clearly, now that I know how to say what I want, and I know how to express unpleasant things in a way that's not totally insulting and leads to a productive solution, I can't believe I ever didn't live this way. Being clear is the most polite way you can live because there are no questions. There are no guessing games. You make it really easy for the other person to either live up to or fail your expectations, and both of those things will tell you what you need to know about that relationship. So living clear, speaking clearly and saying what you want and asking questions when you don't understand what the other person wants, that will transform your relationships, whether you're talking about personal or business. It will transform everything.
Hmm. Absolutely. And it's such a great point too for writers because, that's what you have to do with your writing. If you're not clear, if there's questions in the reader's mind, if they're not sure what's going on, if they're not sure where this is headed, there's, there's a certain element of mystery you want in your novels, but you don't want them to mistake what you're trying to tell them with some completely different message. So you want to be really clear with your communication.
Well, it was like that first round of beta readers when they were saying that Rose in the beginning was unlikable, and I started thinking, oh, I've left too much of her in my head. Because, you're the writer, you've created her, she's in your head, and I just haven't expressed all that I need to in order for other people to walk along that journey with me. And it's the same in your business conversations, your personal conversations. If you leave too much of that in your head, no one can follow you. Just because you know it doesn't mean they know it. So you have to be really clear when you put that out there so that there is no guessing game at all. No one should ever have to guess what you want. No one should ever have to mind read or just know or be intuitive about that. They should never have to do that.
Hmm. Absolutely, absolutely. Well, Betsy, you shared some awesome information with us. Thank you so much. Before you go, tell us where people can find out more about you and your books and the work that you're up to.
You can find more about the Late Bloomer series, which is romance for women over 40, at betsytalbot.com. And if you go there right now, you can download a free short story called The Unfolding, which is about all 5 ladies, New York City, New Year's Eve. And it's a great introduction to the series. So just get that at betsytalbot.com.
Awesome. Great. Thanks so much, Betsy. And if you're listening right now, check out publishingprofitspodcast.com. You can find the episode there with all the show notes, all the links, every website that Betsy mentioned in the show, Scrivener and all that stuff. We'll have links to all that in the show notes. So thank you so much, Betsy. I really, really appreciate you being here.
Thanks, Tom. It's been great.